Hello, thank you for joining us for Cannabiz and Company, episode 3. Today I am joined with Connie Sparrow of Sparrow Consulting and the Michigan Cannabis Coalition. Hello, Connie.
Hi, Jamie. Welcome.
It's great to have you. First of all, tell us a little bit about Sparrow Consulting, the services you offer, and a little bit about your background as well.
So Sparrow Consulting is a full-fledged cannabis consulting firm that specializes really in licensing and business development. So we really focus on the application process in cannabis. We also focus on your facility planning needs from a compliance, occupational health and safety, as well as a state licensing expectation. Sparrow Consulting also does do business development, strategic planning, grant development, funding strategies as well. But for purposes of cannabis, I definitely want to focus on our cannabis licensing.
Awesome. And what is your background? How did you decide to get involved in this crazy world of cannabis?
So my background actually is in government. I've spent 25 years at the federal, state, and local level in a variety of capacities, doing policy development, program development, community development, and then compliance and emergency management. So a lot of what happened was I actually was the one that was overseeing the LARA grants for education and outreach that the police were actually using to get the caregivers in trouble. And in my work overseeing those grants for one of the counties in West Michigan, I quickly realized that the LARA was moving to a commercial medical marijuana facilities licensing act structure. In that, I actually also had just started Sparrow Consulting and decided that I might take on a couple of clients in the cannabis space. Well, about 6 months into that, I quickly realized that my business was pretty much going to transition to fully cannabis from there. And so I still do a little bit of work in the government space, but not a lot. I really am pretty focused on cannabis licensing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about licensing. What does that process look like here in Michigan?
The process for licensing is actually comprehensive. I would definitely say time consuming and very complex. And it depends on which area of licensing you're going into. So for medical marijuana, it's a lot more detailed than into the recreational side of things. Basically, it requires you submitting a whole bunch of financial information, all of your litigation history, all of your criminal background. It's pretty much like getting underwritten for a mortgage. And it requires about as much detail and paperwork submission as getting underwritten for a mortgage. So if you have a really bad experience with mortgages, well, guess what? I'm not going to have any better information for you. It's as painful. The recreational side isn't quite as lengthy when it comes to documentation, but it's still pretty substantial. So the pre-qualification process, which is the first part, is where you really attest to your financials and attest to who you are as a person. And then you disclose those things that the state may feel are not license worthy. And that's the best way to explain the subjective assessment of whether or not you can conduct business in the state of Michigan with cannabis. Now, that being said, we are 100% at the state level and have never been denied. We do some pretty thorough vetting of clients before we take them on, because I'm definitely not one to waste anybody's money when I know that there's some sort of red flag, like I didn't pay my taxes for the last 5 years. You're not going to get licensed in the state of Michigan if you haven't paid your taxes in 5 years. The other part about licensing that people really need to understand is that the state's on an average about 8 months for processing pre-qualifications. So if anybody thinks they're going to get licensed in the next 3 months, that's not going to happen. We actually give it 6 to 8 months of time with us, and even then you may not be done. I still have some clients that are in pre-qual for medical and they've been there for 18 months. So it just depends on your background, how many financial accounts you have, if you're attested to the right amount of capital in the medical side of it, which is always a barrier. And then if you have the patience to make it through. A lot of people don't have the patience to make it through. They get really, really frustrated. We advocate a lot of the time with the state to speed up this process, but rec did not help us because all the analysts from medical moved to rec, and then they hired a bunch of new medical analysts, and that really has created kind of a bottleneck. So we kind of just sit in our 8 to 12 month space and keep you calm. I do on helping you to find your property, make sure it's zoned. And in the time that we're waiting for your state licensing, we actually help you get your local licenses submitted so you feel like you're actually getting something accomplished, because the local units of government are not quite as how should I say, are not quite as root canalish with their assessments of you as a cannabis business owner.
Right. So emotional support through the process is needed.
I would definitely say that that's most of what we do is talk people off cliffs. I have a client up in the UP who moved from Houston, Texas, and she's like, I'm just going to open a provisioning center in the UP. And I'm like, why? Okay. And so she finally got up there after like 6 months of planning and planning and planning. And she got up there and I called her like 2 weeks into it. And she's like, oh my goodness, I feel like all I'm doing is sitting in my pajamas and hanging out with my dog. Is everything okay? You're fine. So it is a lot of emotional support and handholding, but that's actually what we take pride in. We're a small family-owned business. Our goal is to make sure that if you have a problem, if you're feeling anxious, if you're frustrated, I would much rather you call me and be frustrated with me and say, go off on an analyst and then say, not interested in working on that file this week and slide it over to the left, because that happens.
Absolutely. Social equity, it's a hot topic in Michigan. What is social equity and what is being done to address social equity in Michigan?
So social equity is actually pretty unique for the state of Michigan. If you were to talk to states like Colorado, they didn't really decide to do social equity 11 years ago. The state of Michigan actually did some good stuff, well-intended, with social equity by outlining a plan and a program for social equity that really helps those that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs from the cannabis space over the course of the last 50 to 75 years. So there's really two components to it. The first component is that if you are a resident of one of several cities the state's listed out, and you're a caregiver, and you have a cannabis conviction. Now, you don't have to have all three of these things, but if you have 1, 2, 3, or all, or one, you actually get some discounts on your recreational licensing fees, which is substantial when it's $66,000 for a provisioning center license. You can get upwards of 60% off those discounts for licenses, and that definitely helps you get into the cannabis space. We also, as a social equity preferred provider with the state of Michigan, Sparrow Consulting honors those same discounts. So if you choose to go with us as a licensing consulting firm, we actually honor that 60% if that's what you qualify for. The second part of the state social equity program is that all recreational licensees are required to submit a social equity plan to help impact or to help actually counteract the negative impacts that the cannabis industry has had on the cities the state's laid out. And so if you're a recreational facility licensee and you're not sure how to do that, we definitely can help you. We have actually a community foundation called the Michigan Canna Coalition, which serves as a community foundation where you can actually donate your money in, and we will allocate it out to those groups of people in those cities and nonprofits that actually apply for funding, and you get to decide whether or not you want to support project A, B, C, or D. If you're in Traverse City and you don't know how to support Benton Harbor, we have that solution for you. So really what the state is asking for recreational licensees to do is take a portion of dollars and donate it back into local communities that have been disproportionately impacted. And we have the solution for that by being able to help give that money back in a way that's actually tracked, audited, and then measured and reported back to the state.
Are there any communities in Michigan that you feel are tackling the social equity issue right? Who is doing it? Who are the bright shining stars?
So I definitely would say, and this is interesting, it didn't come under the auspice of social equity. It came under the auspice of local economic development. So when we talk about economic development, we talk about a new emerging industry like cannabis. Any money that stays in locally and recirculates locally creates collective wealth. So I would definitely say that the city of Lansing knocked it out of the ballpark. And the reason why is because the city of Lansing scored their local applications and said, we want to see you open up multiple facilities within our city. We want to see you hire a certain specific amount of people that are from the city of Lansing, and we want to see that you're using Lansing contractors to do that work. Grand Rapids also did a pretty good job of it through the MyVeda, and I can't remember what that acronym stands for, but they really pushed the cannabis licensees that were interested in Grand Rapids to go out and talk to the community about the things that were needed, engage with church groups, and engage with neighborhood watches, and really try and figure out how to keep the economics circulating locally. they also gave points, and so did Lansing. Both Grand Rapids and Lansing gave points to people that were actually residents of Grand Rapids or Lansing. So those local units of government, and there are a few more. Pontiac did it. I believe Centerline did it as well. Those local units of government that realized that they could tackle some economic development challenges in their local applications really kind of knocked it out of the ballpark. Now, a different way to impact disproportionate communities is by raising property values. So you can throw the city of Muskegon in there, and the city of Muskegon said, we're going to take our biggest blighted areas, and we're actually going to focus all of the licensees into these overlay districts where we need a lot of community and economic development support when it comes to the real estate. Because what we do know is that when real estate values are very low because of blighted buildings with environmental issues, those neighborhoods surrounding are directly impacted by that. So the city of Muskegon actually took it a little bit further into the economic development realm, and so we really want to see these buildings get back online, raise those property values, because that's going to inherently help the common shared wealth of the people in that area. So if I were to say those three municipalities probably knocked it out of the ballpark, and at the same time, they do a little bit more overreach than they need to too. So we have to be a little bit careful on balance, right? My licensee should not have to pay for 15 streetlights. I don't know, call me crazy. Already dumping $500,000 into the facade updates for blighted buildings. Now we have to put streetlights up. So there's definitely a need for some fine balance. But I can tell you that there are municipalities that their hearts are in the right place, their intentions are good, but sometimes there are unintended consequences that people really struggle with. So it really, like I said, it really needs to be a fine balance when it comes to social equity. But I definitely think if local units of government are focusing on employing local talent, if they're looking for the ability to improve and make sure that the people that are owning these cannabis facilities are actually residents of those communities, the only thing you're going to do is ensure that money is locally circulated. My biggest thing to all of my clients are use local contractors, use local roofers, use local construction companies, use local advertising and marketing firms. Keep your money circulating locally, because the more it circulates locally, the more power you actually bring into the community by spreading those dollars even further than just in social equity.
Those are great tips, Connie. And my last question to you is, what is the greatest tip that you could give someone who is thinking about putting their application in for a state licensed business in Michigan?
Get a consultant sooner than later. And I say that because there are so many different barriers at a variety of levels. If it's not the local unit of government, it's the real estate market. If it's not the real estate market, it's the state licensing side of it. We really strive to make sure that people have a pleasant process in the application world. But what ends up often happening is I will get somebody that comes to me that's already had a bad experience. And they're like, well, I just don't really know. So it's really hard for me to combat their bad taste in their mouth. Whether that's, I gave an attorney $5,000 retainer and I got nothing from it. We don't do things that way. We bill you for a monthly service fee for our services. We're at your access at all points. Get a consultant and learn what's happening in your local area and know what's happening at the state level. Don't be afraid of a sales pitch. Most consultants aren't giving a sales pitch. 99% of the time, you can go right on our website. My cell phone's on our website, and I do that on purpose because people really want a cheerleader. They want a cheerleader. They want somebody to cry on their shoulder. They want a champion that's going to say, nope, we've got it. Let's just keep going. And they don't have to bear the burden of all of the different red tape pieces and parts. And I don't know this local application. And what about this guy and my competition? I mean, we look at you on a holistic standpoint from what's the market like in your target community? That's not a good target. It's already saturated. You know, within 30 square miles, you only have this many medical patients or this much population, and there's already 35 licensed provisioning centers, and most of them are going rec. We're beyond just even helping you with your applications. We're actually informing your business decisions in a way that makes it so that you have a better success rate. And we also have all kinds of stuff that comes across our desk that most people don't have access to, just through networking through things like Cannabiz. People will often send me, hey, I have this piece of real estate. What do you think? Do you have anybody interested? And I'll shove it into a folder of potential opportunities so that if somebody says, geez, I'm really interested in White Cloud, and I can say, well, the population of Whitehall is this, there's already this many licensed facilities. What about this community, which is near there? And so then you end up just making better informed decisions because you're talking to somebody that knows the industry really well.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Connie. How do people get a hold of you?
You can call me on my cell phone, 231-670-5863, or you can email me at Connie, C-O-N-N-I-E, at Hatch, H-A-T-C-H, a plan, PLANMI.com.
Awesome. Connie, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us for Cannabiz and Company. And until next time, see you later.
Thanks, Jamie.